All right, so on today's Self-Healing Insight episode, I worked with a beautiful volunteer. Her name is Karoline, and there are so many things that I love about her and also today's episode that are really powerful. Now, first and foremost, she was able to use her mind to be able to get her pain down from a level 7 down to a level 3. So I love that, and that she could see the difference, which is really powerful to see the mind-body connection. Now, there are a few insights that I want to share that are really powerful. And one of the things is, I have to say is this also, is that all of the time, if you've been listening to each of these episodes, you notice every single time I feel this feeling of loving the volunteer. I always say, oh my gosh, you're going to love this person. You're going to love this person. Now, part of the thing is, we really do get the best volunteers. Also, have you felt that feeling before? If you're somebody who loves music, maybe you listen to music and every time you listen to songs, you feel like, oh my gosh, I love this song. I love this song. Like it's like one after another that just comes on that you feel like, I just love this one. That's the same feeling that I feel with all of our amazing volunteers. I just feel like, oh my gosh, I love this one, and I love this one, and I love this one. So I know I say that all of the time, but we really do just get the best volunteers. And one of the many things that I love about our beautiful volunteer today is her heart, her authenticity, her self-awareness, her self-honesty, just a really beautiful being. And she feels like somebody that you just, want to connect with. Now, this is what's also interesting, though, is that one of the insights was actually this feeling of her feeling left out and not included, which was something that started in her childhood. Now, the reason that I wanted to share this particular insight is because as I was talking to her and working with her, one of the things that came up was that she had been feeling left out. And to give you some backstory, she grew up with her parents getting divorced, and then she had a stepmother come into the picture, and then her stepmother and her father then had another child together. And so it felt like she got pushed out of the way. So it felt like this feeling of disconnect where her and her sister, who were biological, then felt excluded and left out. And then as soon as I mentioned her stepmother, there's this feeling of, feeling triggered by her and left out and criticized, and even feeling this sense of like her stepmother's always watching her. And so just all of these emotions came up, and this feeling of feeling left out. And that's the insight that I wanted to share, is because so often people can feel left out or rejected, and it's not necessarily the case. So somebody can feel rejected or feel left out, and then they get reactive, or then they get demanding. And then what happens from a reactive state is then they can feel more left out and more left out. And so what happens is, and of course, if you think about it in your life, if somebody's feeling reactive towards you, does it make you want to pull them in more or push them away? And I'm not saying that she's outwardly mean or anything like that. Like she mentioned, she keeps everything on the surface good, but that there's a lot of triggers on the inside, and there's a lot of frustration and dislike of her stepmother and whatnot, and even, and so going, just looking at it for a moment, the point is when there's a lot of those feelings of feeling like you don't like somebody or you're upset with somebody, they can feel it, and so that's part of what was going on. And so the insight, just distilling it down for a moment, is that if you're feeling unloved or if you're feeling left out, I'd invite you to think about it, to maybe look at it from a different perspective and look at it with a different awareness. Because one of the things that also came up for our beautiful volunteer is that her stepmother actually paid attention to the things that she did like. She got her things for Christmas that she knew she would like. And so while she was feeling left out and unloved, and like her stepmother was very critical of her, there was also simultaneously feelings of feeling evidence that her stepmother was doing thoughtful things as well. So it's an interesting combination. But what was beautiful is that as she started to change some of these emotions, her pain started to come down. Now, another one that I want to highlight is this. On recent episodes, we've been talking about how positive emotions or negative emotions can get linked up to the positive and vice versa and whatnot. And so I want to kind of highlight that in this episode as well, because this can make healing a bit tricky. And it's this. It's that one of the things that came up for her was also this feeling of like rebellious against authority, if you will. Okay? Now, a lot of times people can have that feeling of rebellious against authority. Now, by the way, if sometimes people would think, well, that can't really affect your health. But even if you look in the study, I've talked to you, like if you're here or maybe if you're new, but I have, work published in a medical journal where you can see the before and after. Now, the sixth participant that I worked with, that was part of his particular connection, which had to do with rebelliousness towards authority. So what can happen, and it's counterintuitive, is that a lot of times when people feel a sense of rebelliousness towards authority, they can feel proud of it. They can feel good about it. In fact, when I mentioned that to our beautiful volunteer, she smiled. And so we were laughing a bit because I said, and what about this feeling of rebelliousness or wanting to get back at authority? And she laughed and she goes, well, I guess that must be there, because she smiled. And I loved her self-honesty, her sense of humor, her being, just a beautiful, beautiful being. And so she smiled and she's like, okay, well, clearly that's there, type of feeling. So, but that's my point, is that can get linked up. Now, notice that was another key to starting to shift things in her life. And that's part of the reason that healing can be very counterintuitive, is that so often people can have these feelings of things that feel good, like a rebelliousness against authority. Now, to give you a different idea about it, for me, I don't have a rebelliousness against authority. To me, I have a feeling of camaraderie. Like, okay, any like police officers or government or whatnot, I have more of a feeling of camaraderie. Like I feel like, I don't feel that sense of authority. I don't think we're not each other's authority. We're all equal. And so different people hold different roles. But to me, having a feeling of rebelliousness against authority would feel small. It would feel like I have authority all the time, and I don't feel like I have authority standing over me all the time. So it would feel smaller when we stop and look at the universal picture. We are all the creators of our lives. We are all in charge of our lives. And I feel that. So I don't feel this sense of authority. And even with universe, God, divine energy, Mother Nature, whatever you want to call it, I feel a sense of camaraderie, a connected feeling. And so thinking about that in your life, if that's something for you, just kind of thinking about that awareness. But again, pointing out that sometimes the reason that healing and self-healing can feel so hard to do is because a lot of times people will think, well, it has to be like a major trauma. But it can be these counterintuitive links where something is linked to something positive and it's completely counterintuitive, and you wouldn't expect for it to even be able to affect your health, and yet it can. So if your mind is blown or you're thinking, wait a second, I encourage you to check out my research in the medical journal, where that was part of the exact pattern, was that feeling of rebelliousness against authority. So, and by the way, sometimes what can happen from that mindset is there can be some integrity issues, or, some different, or frustrations, or, so many different things. Now, for our beautiful volunteer, there was also this feeling of feeling criticized and feeling rebellious. And so there are multiple different emotions going on. And so on that note, that said, there are several other insights. So if you do want to listen to the entire session, you can do so by clicking the link in the show notes. But otherwise, these are some powerful insights that you can kind of think about in your own life. And so food for thought. And as always, by the way, if you are somebody who wants a deeper level of understanding of mind-body healing, you can definitely check out the medical journal link, or there's some free training in the show notes. And as always, I want to ask you, please do take just a quick moment to hit the share button on this episode. Share it with somebody you love, somebody you care about, or somebody you don't even know, because the more that every single person in our world feels healthy and happy and loved and loving, the better this world is for all of us. And so please do take a quick moment to hit the share button, and please do make a point to have an incredible rest of your day. I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. We'll see you there.